So in order to start, I would love to get to know a little bit more about you.
All right. So, looks like my name is Gene Policastri, as you know, and I'm 59 years old. I'm a lawyer in Washington, D.C., right outside of D.C., actually, in Rockville, Maryland. I grew up in Seekonk, Massachusetts, and got out of high school in 1979. Uh, then former Governor Dukakis was our commencement speaker, and that was about 10 years before he ran for the President of the United States. He's a very driven student, very ambitious, and very interested in working in radio and television when I got out of school. And basically, all I did was try to gear up for that kind of a career afterwards and study. That's all I did. And I would work around the radio station where my father worked. He had me doing the groundskeeping, staining the broadcasting center that was a relatively new facility at the time. And I went off to college at Colgate University in Hamilton, New York. And I was so wedded to studying at first physics and engineering, which is totally not in line with, who I really am and what I can do. And as I look back on those college years, I think I so would have been far more exploratory in taking other classes like drawing, art, things that, at the time seemed to me to be, well, I'm not going to do that. That's a waste of time, or that's too easy. It would have been much easier if I had given myself a break, because there was really no need to push like I did. After I got out of college, I did work in television and radio for a few years. And then I went to law school in New Orleans, initially wanting to be a labor rights lawyer, but totally changing after I got there. And the third year I worked in a clinic for underprivileged people, representing their kids in juvenile court for a variety of delinquency actions, and then representing the parents in termination of parental rights proceedings. And I really got the bug for being a trial lawyer. And after I graduated, I loved New Orleans a lot, and so I stayed. And after about 11 years, marriage and 2 children, we moved up to DC, where my wife was from. And I had to reconfigure my whole law practice. I mean, I was essentially starting over. And I worked at a couple of firms for a while, always with the difficulty of trying to prove myself. Once again, overly ambitious, and really didn't serve me well. The people who took a step back, spent some time learning rather than trying to prove by doing, seemed to be much more, have a much more stabilized career. Mine was in fits and starts, and I suppose I always had the entrepreneurial bug or drive, wanting to create something of my own. And again, I went at that, overly ambitiously and hard, and almost got us all in financial trouble, but was able to salvage it. And now, several years later, everything seems to be running smoothly. And I am trying not to be the smartest guy in the room. I'm trying not to be Mr. Know-it-all. And I'm trying to really delegate out and look for the best people in the best position, rather than thinking and appointing myself as the one. And so, given that brief history, if I were to look back on things, I think I would tell my 17-year-old self to broaden interests, to really not be all worried about what other people are thinking of you, to not worry so much about being able to quote unquote make a place for me in the world, that's going to happen. That's there. It's not, I mean, you can't really avoid that even if you tried.
Hmm.
And so I would take a step back. I would try not to be so ambitious. I would try to develop a much broader and richer sense of the world around me. And then, I would be trusting that the next right thing is going to come along and that I'm going to know what to do with it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so glad that you brought up that sometimes people reach a little bit more and they bite off more than they can chew, and then, you know, they could broaden their horizons and their interests, and you don't have to spend 24/7 working and studying, and it's okay to take a little bit of free time. I think that's a great
And
lesson.
in
I'm so glad you
fact,
brought that up.
it's the secret is to do it, to
Yeah.
force yourself to not stay hyper focused on one thing. I
Hmm.
mean, we like to say we like to applaud in this society the obsessive focus on one thing, and that's true, but in moderation. You've got to then,
Hmm.
take a step away.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really important. It's something that people don't really talk about. They don't really express enough how you should take care of yourself more. And there's no reason to spend all your waking hours doing this one thing and for work. I think that's a really great point. Is there any skill that you developed as you were a lawyer that you didn't realize that you had to develop?
Interacting with and forming relationships with
Hmm.
other people. I mean, I had pretty much envisioned the job by going into the law library, coming up with the answer, coming up with the advocacy, and doing it. There's a whole lot of people interaction, and I needed to work on and develop those skills. And one of the reasons why one of the forcing things that I did early on was I got, excuse me, positions where I was forced to be in court a lot, and I was forced to interact a lot with a lot of people. That brought out a side of me that I didn't know that I had, and it's a wonderful asset and ability that I have. And had I been left to my own devices, I'm not so sure I would have developed it.
Wow, that's amazing. What do you think is the most important thing when interacting with people and when forming relationships?
Finding out about them and listening.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
so many people want to talk, talk, talk. I would rather say something to get the conversation started,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so much more important to listen. And you can do your client a far greater service by listening to what the other side both says they want and what they say they want without their words. Like if you listen enough, you're going to hear the clue to solving the dispute.
Yeah, definitely. Someone once said that we have two ears and one mouth.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's better to listen and observe. I think that's a really great point. Has there ever been a moment where you kind of accomplished something, whether it was an award or a moment or something, and you were like, wow, this makes all of the things, all the hardships I've had to go through, it makes all of it worth it for this moment?
I don't know that I would put it that way. I think that at some times I can get visions that say, oh, this is why I went through all of this. Now I see how it has all come together and how it could not have been any different other than to go through the pain, the hard work, what have you.
That's amazing. Do you recommend any skills or something that 17-year-olds should learn, kind of straight out of the gate, kind of going to college, or maybe they want to be their own entrepreneur? Are there any skills that you think, hey, this is a really important skill that you're going to have to use no matter what you do, no matter where you go in life?
Developing rapport with the other people. Instantaneous, learning how to create and facilitate instantaneous rapport. If somebody, we heard this over the weekend, if somebody knows you and likes you and trusts you, they're going to be your cheerleader. They're going to be your teammate. They're going to want what you want, regardless of what it is.
Definitely. Yeah. Do you have any tips for building rapport? Anything that's kind of on the smaller side that says, hey, you can start learning this right now?
Look for something in the other person that you see that you admire and say it. For example, we met Zane over the week.
Yeah.
And I could see his bright shirts, and I had developed an interest in Robert Graham bright shirts like that. I immediately asked him, said, is that a Robert Graham shirt that you're wearing? Well, it wasn't, but that created an instantaneous, we like each other, we can communicate on a particular level. So look for something that the other person either is doing, thinking, something you like about them, and focusing the conversation on that.
Yeah, that's a great example. It's something I like the way that you said it. It's not something that would the first thing that would have come to mind. I would have assumed like you just compliment them off the bat, but I think you brought up a great example of how to phrase it.
Oh, you've got to look. You can't just compliment them off the bat. You've got to look for something that's genuine, that does in fact appeal to you about them.
Yeah, that's a great point. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I learned a lot. It's been a great conversation.
It was
Is there
very
any
nice.
Thank you. Is there any last thing you kind of like to throw out there before we wrap it up?
No, I think that I think for you, you should just keep doing what you're doing. You're a student of this, and you've got a nice way about you. So keep
Thank
being your
you.
authentic self.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was great talking to you again.
Nice to talk to you too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.